papers in this session on purposeful pain that fit the bill perfectly. So congratulations to Susan for crafting what will be a most interesting afternoon, I think, looking at the abstract certainly. Of course, my job is to introduce all the speakers and keep them to time. So they have 15 minutes, so if there's any time for questions within each 15-minute slot, I'll encourage questions from you all. Not all of you, maybe one. So enjoy the session, and I'm sure the speakers will not be inflicting purposeful pain on you much. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce our organizer, Susan Sheridan from the University of Notre Dame. I know how to pronounce it now. To talk about pious pain, repetitive motion disorders associated with excessive genuflection in the Byzantine monastic community from Jerusalem. Oh, and by the way, speakers, I have little signs, and I will drag you off stage if you violate them.
Thank you, Charlotte, I think, and people in the audience for coming to today's session. Reckoning with pain in its acute form is an essential aspect of human existence. Pain and pain behaviors, in the Darwinian sense, operate as a warning system to prevent tissue damage. Pain is often feared, and for most of us, generally to be avoided. Kleinman observed that there is no single way to suffer. There's no universal shape to suffering. In some communities, it is devalued. In others, it's endowed with the utmost significance. Ray stated that pain involves a codified form of social behavior which sets the parameters of allowable overt manifestations. Pain is not expressed in the same way in every culture, and perhaps not even felt the same way in every culture. Indeed, it has been observed that pain is the most frequent adverse stimulus for manipulation of behavior, which is a topic that will come up in several of the papers through the course of this morning. As a result of this topic, it requires a holistic approach that synthesizes the subfields of anthropology and more. For the current study, the written and artistic records constituted some of the cultural evidence for the reconstruction of daily life, complemented by a very rich archaeological record for the site, the region, and the time period. And quite serendipitously, the well-preserved, albeit commingled, remains of the inhabitants themselves of Byzantine St. Stephen's Monastery provided a vital clue in the reconstruction of the topic at hand. The site in question was a Byzantine monastery located just outside the walls, the old city walls of Jerusalem. This is where St. Stephen's is located, and so it's right along the Damascus Road, outside of the gates of the old city. Today, ironically, it's also a monastery, and it's the home to a Dominican priory and the French School for Biblical Archaeology. Pilgrimage to Jerusalem was a major social phenomenon from the 5th through 7th centuries AD, with many travelers choosing to stay in the Holy Land and join monasteries. This map shows only those sites for which we have a written record and extant archaeological evidence, and it's only showing those monastic sites west of the Jordan River. So if you were to throw in the country, you would have a sea of dots. This is a reconstruction of 6th century Jerusalem, and in it you can see the wall of the old city. This gray dot right here is the Church of the Holy Sepulchre, where it's believed Jesus was killed and buried, and outside the walls of the old city, you see the circled area is a part of the compound that was St. Stephen's. It was the largest church-related complex in the Holy Land for more than 100 years. And in all the writings about it, they talk about both its grandiose size and its extraordinary wealth. So it makes it into the writings quite regularly. When you go underground at St. Stephen's, you find a series of crypts, a series of tombs. And what you're looking at is the outer room here, 2 people are standing in it. This is one of the rooms that has where the bones would have been laid out. And the bones were laid along burial beds right here. There's even a little headrest up at the top. And when they needed the space on the site in 1995, that's what I came upon. When I said they were commingled, they were very definitely commingled. And we slowly but surely exhumed all of the bones from that site. One of the most immediately notable features of the bones as we were taking them out was the exceptional degradation of the lower limbs. At virtually every site of muscle attachment, we found notable musculoskeletal markers associated with deep flexion of the foot and the knee. The knees, heels, and first toes in particular manifest evidence of severe osteoarthritis. After careful examination of these portions of the lower leg, we were able to build a very convincing biomechanical model of repetitive motion disorder associated with kneeling. And I'm going to give you just two examples in this slide and the next of some of the things that we looked at. Here we see marked pathologies of the calcaneus, the heel bone, including very large heel spurs underneath of the calcaneus, and where the plantar neurosis attaches, and on the site of the attachment for the Achilles tendon along the back of the calcaneus. From your seated position, if you bend your foot up on your toes, you'll feel both of those places. So you'll feel the plantar fascia underneath your foot pulling on one part of your calcaneus, and you'll feel your gastrocnemius muscle tighten up and pull on the Achilles tendon along the back of your calcaneus. When it came to the knees, they were a mess. Technical term. On the majority of individuals, the cartilage was damaged or missing, as well as the underside of the patella, the kneecap, resulting in bone-on-bone rubbing. You can see in these images examples of that eburnation in the upper slide, and the severe lipping on the margins of the articular surface on the lower slide. If that top image was 3D, you could turn it and actually see that the bone is shiny from the bone-on-bone rubbing. So why were they kneeling? When I got back to Notre Dame, we had a plethora of priests. I was asking theologians, and I just assumed it was prayer. It's a monastery, they're praying. That idea was quickly poo-pooed, and I was told that actually the tradition, according to the art and iconography of the time, was that people prayed in the orans position. Hands up like this, head slightly back, looking up. They could touch down Jesus. Had to get that in there. However, so we gave up on that for a while. We went to looking at food processing, and we were looking for some of the same pathologies that you find at Harappa, for example. Many of the lower body pathologies, infirmities were there, but none of the vertebral or forelimb involvement was found. The same was true for pathologies associated with gardening. So we reluctantly came back to prayer. And I joined up with a liturgist and a patristic scholar, and we went back and started to look at the historical liturgical doctrine, and found that, in fact, it differs from what the art and iconography are showing us. And Michael Driscoll traveled to Jerusalem on leave to study the liturgical records for the period and the site. And found out that actually kneeling for prayer in Jerusalem was very common, particularly beginning at about the 4th century. Indeed, it was so common that they started to write prohibitions about when you couldn't do it. So during the Easter octave, during Lent, no kneeling. It's easier than chocolate, I guess. But you had to give up your kneeling for a period of time. He found references to forms of prostration that roughly translates to genuflection, the practice of going down on one knee and rising. So you'll see people do that when they go into a church pew sometimes, much deeper than I'm doing, and then come back up. And you're putting pressure on both feet, both knees doing that. And this is an extreme. He found that this behavior was not uncommon, and that actually the average for monks of the region was to engage in 200 to 300 genuflections a day. This next quote is an example of an extreme of that. At night, I would pray in the cave where the saintly Theodosius was. As I went down into the cave, I would make 100 genuflections to God at each step, and there were 18 steps. That's a lot of deep knee bends. And so suddenly, the reason for our very bad knees and toes was becoming clear. Which begs the question, if this behavior led to such chronic pain that the monks couldn't have escaped from, whether they were standing up, sitting down, lying down. Why keep doing it? Because long after the onset, they kept doing it, and the degeneration shows that they kept doing it. We have the knees in 30-year-olds that are comparable to the knees of 60-year-old tile layers. It was that severe. And just 2 days ago, thanks to Charlotte, I learned about the index of care, which is a 4-step process for evaluating claims of disability and looking at ancient human remains. And so that'll be the next aspect of this that we take a look at. Why do it? According to the text, there was a bit of a fad at this time to prove your piety through suffering. A reemergence of Stoic philosophy, where suffering was to be embraced, not endured. It became a noble test of one's faith. Indeed, they got really quite inventive. And so what you see here is Simeon's the stylite, or Simon Stylites. And of course, Simeon decided he wanted to go out and get away from people. So he went out, and people followed him. And so he went further, and people followed him, and he decided, okay, if I can't go out, I'm going to go up. So he came back towards Aleppo and built himself about a 9-foot pillar and put a little platform on it and sat up there. As it turns out, for the next 47 years. And people kept coming. So it got higher and higher, and eventually he got it up to 50 feet, and then the royalty of the region started showing up. And so the poor guy was never alone. But he started a fad in Syrian monasticism of stylite sitting as a way to show your piety. The monk in chains that's shown in this picture next door is not, oops, sorry, in this picture right here, is a practice that was happening in the Jerusalem area where people would wear very heavy chains and then add to them during the course of their lifetime as a way of showing their piety, and they were often buried with them as well. And it wasn't a sign that the individual was a slave. Others walled themselves into small caves with just a slot along the top that their fellow monks could give them food. And when those people died inside, their brothers would come along and knock down the clay and find themselves thigh high in human excrement. That's what the person had been living in. Others had themselves built into cages where they couldn't straighten themselves up at all and hung from a tree for 3 or 4 years, just because. So essentially, this study has allowed us to use the biological record to explore social phenomena such as deference to authority, the genesis of prayer practice, and the symbolic meaning of suffering. Pious adherence to the regimented daily monastic schedule, defined by prayer, led to the degeneration of joints of the lower body that resulted in severe and constant pain. Historical accounts indicate that this purpose-driven pain was the main goal of the behavior. And so I like this story because we're able to go from purely an anatomical study of really, not for them, but for us, cool osteoarthritic pathologies of a severity you rarely see, and suddenly be able to be talking about a very human dimension of their daily lives, of suffering, how they interpreted pain, that we would not have immediately assumed would come from this conversation between biological anthropology and a slew of areas that were in the humanities. That's all. I think thanks several groups for their funding, and many students who worked with us over the years. I don't know how much time I have. Do I have? Looks like
You have 2 minutes.
Wow.
If there are any questions.
We're not used to having
Questions? What is that?
Time to ask questions. What you have now.
I have a question.
Go on.
Okay.
We were wondering if you looked at like habitual squatting.
Yep. That was a slide I thought I would go over, so I took it out. But they looked at anything you can think of.
Right.
So we did non-metrics of the femur, the tibia, the calcaneus, the talus. We looked for squatting facets, MSMs, osteochondrosis, osteophytosis, and we looked in the vertebra for schnorrels, we learned the thoracic vertebra, and we looked all over the arms for different things too. Just in the legs we found it all, but in the vertebra and the arms it wasn't the case. And
I have a question. You're dealing with completely commingled collections. Could you individuate anyone, or were you doing an elemental analysis?
elemental, never ever have tried putting them together.
Sweet.
Seems like, I've argued with bit of a waste of time, and you can get at larger community patterns in this fashion, which I think is more meaningful, to be honest.
Thank you.